The Subcommittee on Interior, Energy, and the Environment will come to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. We appreciate your interest in this topic and welcome your participation today. We may be having some members from the full committee here today, so I'd like to ask for unanimous consent that all members of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform be allowed to fully participate in today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. And I'll now recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. Today, the Subcommittee on Interior, Energy, and the Environment will examine obstacles that Native Americans face with respect to energy development, education, and health care on tribal land. The General Accounting Office and the Department of the Interior Inspector General have extensively documented the serious and troubling problems Native Americans face in these areas. Today, we're going to try to do our part to bring attention to these issues by shining a little bit of light, congressional light, and oversight on them. When it comes to energy development, tribes face costs and regulatory impediments that do not exist for development on non-tribal land. Attaining a permit to drill on Native American land is more expensive and time-consuming than doing so off tribal lands. Tribes must conduct detailed environmental assessments and obtain costly permits that not every tribe can afford. The Department of Interior attempted to address this by creating a special service center to streamline the regulatory process. However, 3 of the largest regulatory agencies, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Fish and Wildlife Service, were not included in the service center. Omitting agencies that play such a large role in regulating the energy development undermines the Department's effort to reduce the barriers to energy development on tribal land. As a result of these unnecessary impediments, valuable development opportunities are wasted and revenue is lost. For example, the Southern Ute Tribe, represented here today in our hearing, has foregone almost $90 million in revenue waiting for federal approval of right-of-way agreements. Energy resources represent a crucial way for many tribes to meet their budgetary obligations and provide needed services to their members. As for education, the Bureau of Indian Education, or BIE, has struggled to provide adequate school facilities for tribal children. Roughly 42,000 students attend schools administered by the BIA. Badly outdated schools are in disrepair and pose a major health and safety risk for students. Inconsistent inspections have contributed to deteriorating physical conditions of school. Problems include asbestos, mold, roofing issues, and electrical danger. I think we have some slides here of some schools. As you can see here, we've got an upstairs room in a 1930s building that holds elementary classes at Tuba City Boarding School. This school is, with this exposed wiring, is listed in good condition. Let's go to the next slide. Now, I don't know if you can make it out, but there's some bleachers in there by that middle telephone pole. But they've actually put light posts in the middle of the athletic field there. Millions of dollars were spent on infrastructure improvements, and we come up with this. Image 3, we see thick walls of asbestos insulation are left in one dormitory because the cost to move it is outrageous. Next slide. And we see structural cracks in the stairwell ceiling at another school. Next slide. Building space is needed for student activities. At this school, the building is being kept from being demolished despite the fact that snow comes into the building. That's a pile of snow there under the door. Inadequate staff training contributes not only to inaccurate reporting of schools' physical condition, but also to the independent oversight of school expenditures. GAO has found that millions of dollars intended for Native American schools have been lost due to waste and misconduct. In one instance, over $1 million in federal funds intended for a BIE school ended up improperly in a non-school-related offshore account. Despite the fact that BIE schools spend almost 3 times per student more than public schools, we have a serious problem. Similarly, the Indian Health Service Agency, which serves the medical needs of roughly 2.2 million Native Americans, suffers from inadequate patient care. Patients often experience unreasonably long wait times, and high turnover rates of key personnel negatively impact the quality of care and services at IHS schools. Hopefully today we can make some progress by highlighting the issues and discuss it with our panel and come up with some solutions. As the new administration takes office, this is a good time to hold these hearings. With that, I'd like to thank the witnesses for agreeing to be here today and provide testimony. At this point, I'd like to recognize our ranking member, the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Plaskett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank the witnesses and all of the individuals who are here this afternoon about this very important issue. Mr. Chairman, this hearing that we're having is critically important, and I want to thank you for holding this early in the term. Tribal concerns are often underrepresented, and I'm glad that we're dedicating a hearing to address these issues and finding solutions. The GAO high-risk report has outlined several problems that the tribal community has faced in the areas of energy, healthcare, and education, as highlighted by the chairman for the education issues as well. The report highlights problems ranging from inadequate federal oversight, limited federal workforce planning, outdated and deteriorated equipment, technology, and infrastructure, and incomplete or inaccurate data. These shortcomings are creating significant difficulties for these tribal communities. Many tribal communities are heavily reliant on energy resources for their economic well-being and dependent upon the Bureau of Indian Affairs to conduct thorough but efficient reviews. But the GAO found that it took up to 8 years for the BIA to process permits, a delay which caused the tribe to lose an estimated $95 million in revenues that it otherwise would have earned from tribal permitting fees, oil and gas severance taxes, and royalties. This represents an unacceptable financial burden on this community. And I have to tell you that I especially am very sympathetic and empathetic to these issues coming from the Virgin Islands, where we also feel the inadequate representation of the federal government and often feel forgotten and the last person on the checklist of infrastructure and development, energy issues for our young people, and especially for our children. It's absolutely unacceptable that children are expected to thrive and to be productive citizens under the conditions that they are now in. The fact that they have speaks to their resilience and the power and the wherewithal of your community to make that happen. GAO also found that similar delays plague the Indian Health Service and the Bureau of Indian Education, preventing tribal members from receiving timely health care and making schools unsafe for children. In order to improve these federal agencies, the Department of Interior, Office of the Inspector General, must be able to adequately investigate these issues. However, I'm very concerned that in this new administration, the hiring ban is going to severely compromise the ability of the IG and the IGs throughout the entire government to protect taxpayers from the type of mismanagement the GAO found. I'm asking my Republican colleagues to join me in requesting that the President immediately lift the hiring ban so our IGs can have the resources and staffing they need to ensure the proper functioning of government and prevent waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm very much, Mr. Chairman, looking forward to hearing from our witnesses, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much. And I'll hold the record open for 5 legislative days for members who would like to submit a written opening statement. I'd now like to recognize our panel of witnesses. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Frank Rusco, Director of National Resources for Environment, let me get your title right, Director of Natural Resources Environment for Energy and Science Issues at the U.S. Government Accountability Office. He'll be accompanied and supported by Ms. Melissa Emery-Aras, Director of Education, Workforce, and Income Security, also at the GAO, and Kathleen King, Director of Healthcare at the GAO. Their expertise on this issue will be important for the subject matter of this hearing, so when we swear the witnesses in, we'll ask that you be sworn in as well. Our other witnesses are Ms. Mary Kendall, Deputy Inspector General within the Office of Inspector General at the U.S. Department of Interior. Welcome. And finally, the Honorable Tyson Thompson, Councilman with the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. Welcome to you all. Now, pursuant to committee rules, you'll all be sworn in before you testify. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect all witnesses answered in the affirmative. You may be seated. In order to allow plenty of time for questions and discussion, we do have quite a few members here. We'd appreciate it if you'd limit your initial testimony to 5 minutes. We have copies of your entire written statement, which will be made part of the record. So, Mr. Rusko, we'll start off with you. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Farenthold, Ranking Member Plaskett, and members of the committee, it's my pleasure to be here today to discuss a new area added to GAO's high-risk list, improving federal management of programs that serve tribes and their members. We're adding this high-risk area because we have found long-standing problems in the federal management of Indian energy resources, as well as the administration of Indian education and health care programs. Interior's Bureau of Indian Affairs has mismanaged Indian energy resources and the federal role in energy development, and this has limited and delayed opportunities for tribes and their members to use those resources to create economic growth and improve the well-being of their communities. In addition, we have found numerous challenges facing Interior's Bureau of Indian Education and BIA and the Department of Health and Human Services, Indian Health Services, in administering education and health care to tribes and their members. These shortcomings have put the health and safety of American Indians served by these programs at risk. As you know, the United States has recognized the sovereign status of tribes and currently recognizes 567 Indian tribes as distinct, independent political communities that possess certain powers of sovereignty and self-government. In 2016, Congress found in the Indian Trust Asset Reform Act that through treaties, statutes, and historical relations with Indian tribes, the United States has undertaken a unique trust responsibility to protect and support Indian tribes and Indians. These fiduciary responsibilities reflect commitments made in treaties and agreements under which Indians surrendered claims to vast tracts of land to the benefit of the people of the United States. This history has established enduring and enforceable federal obligations to which the national honor has been committed. The remainder of my statement is focused on energy issues, but my colleagues Melissa Emery-Aris and Kathy King are here to answer questions about education or health care issues as needed. Some tribes hold abundant energy resources, including coal, oil, and gas, wind, solar, biomass, and hydroelectric resources. And some tribes and members have sought to develop these resources. While tribes and their members can determine how to use their energy resources, many of these resources are held in trust or restricted status. In these cases, BIA must review and approve leases, permits, and other documents required for development. We have found deficiencies in BIA's management of Indian energy resources in several areas. For example, BIA processes to issue leases, permits, rights-of-way, and appraisals often take a long time to perform, and this has led to delays and missed opportunities for tribes and their members. As has been mentioned, in one case we reported that delays in rights-of-way for pipelines cost the Southern Ute tribe about $95 million in foregone fees, severance taxes, and royalties over a period of 8 years. In another case, a 3-year review of a lease to develop wind power led to uncertainty about the viability of the project because the data that were used to support the economic feasibility and environmental impact of the project became too old to use. We have recommended that BIA develop and document clear processes to track review and response times so they can ensure that documents are moving in a timely and predictable fashion. BIA has also missed opportunities to streamline review and approval processes by not communicating and coordinating with other federal agencies that have a role in these processes. Further, BIA has not used best practices to identify key staff needs to support energy development, and this has contributed to a situation where the Bureau does not have the right people with the right skills in the right place to enable energy development. BIA has also not invested comprehensively in GIS mapping technology required to easily identify resources available for lease, as well as places where leases are already in force. In places without GIS capabilities, BIA has to rely on paper documents, which adds to review and approval times. Lastly, in some cases, BIA does not have accurate records of Indian land and resource ownership, another piece of information essential for reviewing and approving energy leases and ensuring tribes and their members get paid their share when energy production begins. We have made numerous recommendations to Interior and BIA to address these deficiencies, and we will be following the progress of the agency and Bureau in improving its delivery of services to tribes and their members. Thank you. This concludes my oral statement. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kendall, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the invitation to testify today about the conditions of Indian country as it relates to DOI's responsibilities to American Indians. As you know, DOI's mission includes fulfilling trust responsibilities to American Indians. Fulfilling these responsibilities is consistently a top management challenge for DOI. Through the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Bureau of Indian Education, the Department provides services to 567 federally recognized tribes with a population of about 1.9 million American Indians and Alaska Natives, and provides education services to about 42,000 Indian students in 183 schools. DOI funds Indian country programs that provide social services, law enforcement and detention services, tribal justice systems, housing assistance, repair and maintenance of schools, roads and bridges, and economic development programs in some of the most isolated and economically depressed areas in the United States. For many years, the Office of Inspector General has reported that BIA and BIE are failing to meet their responsibilities to American Indians on many fronts. But I will focus my comments today on the challenges facing Indian schools. Specifically, substantial work is needed to improve the Indian education system, particularly in creating environments where children are safe and have adequate means to learn. In May 2015 testimony, BIE leadership acknowledged that they face unique and urgent challenges in providing a high-quality education to Indian students attending BIE schools. They attributed these challenges in part to difficulty in attracting effective teachers, difficulty in adopting research-based reforms, ongoing organizational and budgetary restructuring efforts, and inconsistent BIE leadership. A high-quality education is also hampered by crumbling school infrastructure and limited broadband internet access. All of these challenges contribute to low graduation rates for Native students. Nationally, the American Indian Alaska Native high school graduation rate is 69%, below the average national of 81%. BIE's 2014 Blueprint for Reform recommended a shift in the Bureau's role from direct provider of education to one of a capacity builder and service provider to the tribes that run their own schools. According to the blueprint, greater tribal control of schools promotes self-governance and self-determination, giving tribes more power to engage children, infuse schools with tribal cultural values and native languages, and improve educational outcomes. BIE's goal is commendable, but this vision probably requires more technical and financial assistance for tribes than BIE can presently provide. To address some of these complex challenges, DOI's fiscal year 27 budget request proposes $1 billion to support a comprehensive redesign and reform of BIE. But to effectively use its federal funding in addressing these challenges, BIE needs to improve both its execution and its oversight of school expenditures. What I fear gets lost in reports such as those issued by GAO and the OIG on Indian country is the impact that the conditions we report on has on real human lives. The young people in Indian country who are dependent upon the schools that BIA operates or oversees are profoundly affected by attending schools with crumbling infrastructure, schools that have wholly inadequate physical safety measures, and schools that are not equipped to prevent or respond to violence or other emergency situations. This concludes my prepared remarks, and I am happy to answer any questions that members of the subcommittee may have.
Thank you. You're all doing very well on the clock. Mr. Thompson, can you keep up the trend? You need to turn your microphone on and get real close to it. These are kind of very not sensitive microphones. They want you to be real close.
Sounds good. Awesome. Thank you, Chairman Farenthold, Ranking Member Plaskett, and the honorable members of the subcommittee. Thanks for having us here today. My name is Tyson Thompson, councilman for the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. And again, it is an honor to be here. Our reservation is located in southwest Colorado, chipped away through the years and years of federal demands to a section that's about 15 by 75 miles, just a strip in the bottom. We began to develop oil and gas in our reservation in the 40s, and since then we have been taking greater and greater control over our mineral resources and destiny. Some examples of this are collecting nearly $1 billion in revenue since we enacted a severance tax in 1982. In 1992, our tribe started a Red Willow production company, which operates wells on and off the reservation and is wholly owned by the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. In '94, our tribe partnered to create Red Cedar Gathering Company to provide gathering and treating services on the reservation. Less than 50 years ago, the tribe could no longer make per capita payments to our members. But with strong vision of our past leaders, internal expertise, informed decisions, and planning for the future, we have come a long way since then. Today, we conduct oil and gas activities in 10 states, and we are the largest employer of the Four Corners region of southwest Colorado. Our success allows our tribe to provide many services to our people, including great health insurance, as well as give a college education to any of our members that wish it. We're the only tribe in the nation with a AAA credit rating from Standard & Poor's. About 30% of the tribe's income comes from energy development on the reservation. There is no question that energy development has put the tribe, our membership, as well as the surrounding community on a more stable economic footing. We can tell you firsthand that federal oversight often impedes tribal self-determination. For example, the BLM issues drilling permits on tribal lands, which can take 4 to 6 months and cost $9,500. The state of Colorado, though, can issue drilling permits on private lands, typically within 45 days, and it's free. No wonder oil and gas companies would rather drill on private lands, and unfortunately, our reservation is checkerboarded. If you're not familiar with the checkerboard status of the reservation, it's not unlike this table where the brown color is the entire reservation. Everything you see on top of this table would be trust land. So an operator can go across the fence and have a different set of regulations and still be within the exterior boundaries of the reservation and be utilizing that same resource that's underground. Willing and able tribes should be allowed greater authority over energy development on tribal lands. We have shown time and time again that we can complete major projects quickly and effectively. Federal agencies have often hindered or flat out refused our efforts to assist in carrying out these functions, or their functions rather. In 2014, Office of Trust Review and Audit Report was found that the BIA mishandled the tribe's historical records at the Southern Ute Agency. The Southern Ute Indian Tribe made countless offers to assist the BIA in solving this problem, and after many months, our tribe was finally authorized to enter into a 638 contract, allowing the tribe to scan and organize our historic files at the agency while using $1 million of our own funding as well as our own staff. The tribe has also streamlined the process of approving in a single transaction all right-of-way renewals that an operator has on the reservation. At times, this number is in the hundreds. This approach allows the tribes to easily monitor expiration dates and negotiate renewals, including holding operators accountable to environmental concerns. When the tribe presented one of these rights-of-way packages to the Southern Ute Agency for approval, it took the agency nearly 4 years to approve the package. There was no way for the agency to enter this transaction and its information into the department's land management system, which is they call the TAMS. To overcome the problems with the BIA Realty function, the tribe created its own GIS system known as the Land Information Management System. Our system allows the tribe to scan realty records into our database where each document is linked to a location on a map. Very similar to Google Maps when you're looking for a store and you click on the store, it tells you the hours and the dates and times that they're open. We would be happy to give the demonstration of the system to the committee at your convenience. The BIA does not have the data, resources, staffing, or IT capabilities to meet the tribe's needs or the other capable tribes' needs for that matter. We have the capability, and more importantly, we have the incentive to improve the situation. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution for tribes. Some solutions aren't expensive, though. Congress needs to approve legislation to allow tribes the choice to take on more responsibility. Federal positions need to be advertised locally so that local people who already live in the area can apply for them. There needs to be a cost of living adjustment for our area to entice people to work there. And the BIA needs to stop arbitrarily choosing when they'll exercise trust responsibility. The BIA abandoned the trust's responsibility to protect and organize the tribe's priceless records, but then cited their trust responsibility when they required Southern Ute Agency and the tribe to use federal funds to require tribal employees to drive 160 miles to be fingerprinted, have a photo taken, undergo hour-long interview with the OPM contract investigator before being allowed to work in the office. Those are simple solutions and not too expensive to take on to change that. To follow up, the Southern Ute Tribe is well-equipped, as we said, and to responsibly develop its own energy resources safely and effectively. We do appreciate the efforts of this subcommittee, as well as GAO's office and OIG's office, to help find solutions to problems that we experience on a day-to-day. Again, thank you for the invitation to appear before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I'll now, we'll now do some questions. I'll recognize myself to begin with. And so let's go, Mr. Rusko, why has it taken so long to get things approved in these agencies?
Well, I think, you know, it gets to a couple of things. One is leadership attention. So they've not paid as much attention to sort of making sure that they have a plan to get the right staff in the right places to do the job. And so if you're someplace where you used to have a lot of, for example, water projects, irrigation projects or something, and you want to move to energy, you go to the BIA office, and they might have a whole bunch of hydrologists, but they don't have anybody that knows anything about oil and gas development or wind development or anything like that. They need to be forward-looking. They need to be creative. They have an Indian Energy Center.
Right, so, but you're saying they may not have the expertise and staff. How do we solve this without growing the size of government and bringing more bureaucrats into these agencies who will probably slow the process down?
So I think there are some potential ways to do that, but under the current law, you do have to deal with these agencies. I think that there is a lot to be said for building that capacity in a central location, but you have to do it in a smart way. And the Indian Energy Center that they started is probably a good idea, but they have not executed it well.
Why didn't they put EPA, Fish and Wildlife in the Corps? I mean, I'm a Texan. I know these are the guys that you got to mess with whenever you're doing any sort of infrastructure or energy project. How come they weren't included?
Absolutely, and they absolutely, when they were building or creating this office, they did not even ask the question, what do we need to perform the tasks that we say this is going to perform? They didn't go to that trouble, and that's a leadership problem.
Right. Ms. Kendall, do you have anything to add along this line of questioning?
I really would just re-articulate what Mr. Brusco said. I think it is a leadership issue, and it is a forward-thinking kind of issue to sit back and look at the entire picture. BIA has so many responsibilities, but I think they try piecemeal solutions without coming together and actually solving things.
All right, so what about devolving some of this to the states? Mr. Thompson testified that in Colorado, for no charge and 45 days, you could get a drilling permit for oil and gas. In Texas, the Railroad Commission is equally as efficient. Obviously, there needs to be some government oversight where the tribe itself doesn't have full authority, just like no landowner has full authority without going to the government. Why couldn't some of this be devolved to the states?
Is that my question?
That's your question, and I'm going to ask Mr. Thompson the same question.
Right, thank you, sir. I think in part because Interior does have the trust responsibility, it would take a change in legislation.
Oh, wait, we're Congress, we can do that.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
I think Southern Ute is in a unique position. I think there's a lot of tribes that may not be as fortunate or as lucky as we have been to get to the point where we are today. And I think some of those monies that are redirected towards assisting those tribes versus us, when we can handle a lot of these situations that come up to really make business attractive on the reservation. I don't think giving up or taking these regulations to the state would be in the tribe's best interest just due to self-determination and sovereignty issues, as we want to be doing what we need to do to survive in the world that we're given.
So you're more support reform within the existing federal system?
I think there's a chance to do things differently. It would take a little bit of letting go of that parental side of treatment that tribes have suffered through the years, and then redirecting those available resources to other tribes that may request it if they feel like they want to request it, and increase the ability of that internal function of BIA to be better than it's ever been. But that's only going to take place with good management in place.
All right, and so we were talking about how much money you guys lost on the oil and gas. I assume, I mean, they're saying that some of this permitting process took 8 years. I would love to be selling my natural gas and oil at prices 8 years ago as opposed to today. You have any other examples of where we can where we should be focused? Obviously, the schools, the permitting process. Is that all we need to be looking at?
I think better consultation for all Indian tribes is a great idea. Consultation always been good for some and not good for others. I've seen firsthand what the lack of consultation can do. But good, proper consultation to make the programs that work for specific tribes. Every tribe is different. Every tribe's needs are different, and to really make something that works for each tribe. I mean, it's a big challenge, but it's something that be accomplished.
All right, I see I'm out of time. If we get to the end and we still have some time, I'll ask some more questions, but I do want to give everybody an opportunity to get their questions answered. So we'll recognize the ranking member now for her questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again, testifier. Be responsible, and then in the times when you want them to be responsible, they're not. Can you elaborate on that? Do you remember that?
Yes, I'm just thinking how to word to you, but what I believe where this trust responsibility is really coming into play is they're taking that trust responsibility and applying it to where they would like to, which is maybe the easier, better function for those in the agency at the top. And instead of, really addressing the trust responsibility we're asking them to achieve at the moment with in regards to realty transactions, if we could just really push some of these things for our tribe that benefit us now and quickly and in the long run, I mean, it would be a great thing to accomplish. As far as trust responsibility not being done in other fashions. I mean, there's a lot of examples out there, and I'd be happy to provide you some certain examples in writing as well.
Thank you. You also talked, and all of the witnesses today mentioned the Tribal Energy Resources Agreement, and as a tool intended to promote efficient energy and resource development by allowing tribes to enter into energy-related business arrangements without further approval of the Secretary of Interior. Would that be a correct summary, Ms. Kendall, of the agreement?
That's my understanding of that provision. But as of today, as the best of my knowledge, no tribe has entered into a terror agreement.
That's what I wanted to talk about. Why do you think that has been, and what's been the impediments to the tribes being able to do that?
Well, I'd need to defer to Mr. Thompson to a certain extent, because I know that the Southern Ute tribe thought about that at one point. I think that there are some impediments relative to what the trust responsibilities of the department are and what they could and should give up. I know that the tribe has asked the department for clarification on some issues and has not received that, and I think that's one of the impediments.
Well, I understand that some of this goes back to the arbitrary discussion that Mr. Thompson talked about, but isn't it also because the Interior's regulations may not necessarily be very clear to some of the tribes and what will be imposed and not be imposed on them?
That's very possible, yes.
And then, Mr. Thompson, is that correct? I understand that your tribe did do an analysis on whether or not they should enter into this agreement and decided not to?
Mm-hmm. That's true. We've been looking at this for a while, and some of the things that keep us from this, I mean, one of the biggest points that comes to mind is the inherent federal function part. The Interior has not defined that. We've been asking for a definition for some time. Once we can figure out what that is, and then we can better plan to see what functions we'd actually be assuming. And even once assuming those functions, one of the things is terrorists are not going to provide funding for us to take over these federal functions. So, I mean, our tribe, like other tribes, we're just reluctant to move into that.
Mr. Rusko, would you think that analysis is correct from your review?
Absolutely. I think, as every tribe is different, and the abilities and capabilities to take over what have been federal functions are going to differ, and there's going to have to be capacity building. And so tribes are understandably wary about sort of saying, yes, I'll take on this responsibility without knowing what exactly that entails, how much will be on them, how much will still remain federal function, and then will they have support in order to build the capacity to take over the functions that are part of the TARA.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted, as clarification, the pictures that you showed, which tribe was that from?
They were from various locations. Let me take a look. The Flandreau Indian School was one of them, and where was it? And all of the pictures are out of the OIG report. So
Okay, great.
the details are in there. There was a boarding school in there as well.
Mr. Thompson, is the conditions that were evidenced in those photographs, is that some of the issues that you're dealing with as well?
At this point, I believe that there's a lot of tribes that utilize that funding for education. We're in a bit of a different situation, so I might not be the best person to ask. There's other
Right,
tribes
because
that-
your tribe actually, with your AAA rating, you have a little bit more funding for education, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, it would be great if we could, in the future, maybe have some tribes that, as a witness, who are really facing some of the challenges in education that we've stated. So,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we'll go to the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Thompson, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here. I'm particularly interested in the work that you're doing in oil exploration and utilizing those resources. I assume, and I'm not sure, the geography of the Ute tribal lands, but does that include the Green River Formation?
I believe Green River Formation
Okay.
might be another Ute tribe. There's 3 of us,
It's north of you, I believe, isn't it?
so.
Okay.
Wouldn't be-
So you talked about since 1982, you've generated over $1 billion in revenue from your activities. Is that correct?
Yes, through severance tax.
Severance tax. Are these companies that are owned and operated by the Ute tribe?
No, these are operators that have leased or through the tribe have leased trust lands within the exterior boundaries of the reservation.
So, but you're collecting the revenues through the leases and the royalties. You get a part of the royalties.
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to understand this because I'm a big believer in utilizing the natural resources and doing it in the right way. And what little I understand about the Ute tribal history, you have a great reverence for the land. So you want to take advantage of these resources in a way that respects the land that you've occupied before anybody else occupied Colorado. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, and you've been able to do that.
Yes. I mean, we like I said before in my oral statement, we've used that in the past as a way of leveraging environmental issues. We had one producer that had hundreds of, rights of ways that were coming to time to renew. And at the time, they had grandfathered in a compressor system that was from the 50s and dumping a lot of air pollution. We have real strict air regulations on the reservation. We work real close with the state on those air regulations. And so we use that as an opportunity to tell them they need to replace their compressor systems or they're not going to be renewed on the reservation.
Good. Well, let me continue along this line on the permitting process. The Bureau of Land Management is responsible for the permitting.
Yes.
And
Well, sorry, our department, we have our own Department of Energy, and they take that task on. And the land information system is a part of DOE, along with our IT folks.
maybe I misunderstood. I thought I thought I understood you to say that, that on private land, they can, through Colorado, they can get a permit within 45 days.
Yes.
And it doesn't cost them anything, but on Ute land, how long does it take?
Oh, takes 4 to 6 months.
And why is that?
Just the time it takes to walk through from the moment it leaves our office and goes to the agency office and then to the regional office and then to the interior office at HQ and then recirculating back with all those approvals.
Does that put you at a disadvantage?
It does. As we know, the competitive business of oil and
Right.
gas, time is money, so to speak. And if things aren't expedited, I mean, it takes its toll.
And especially
Or just walk
when
away.
you're, most of the companies that are doing the type oil exploration, they're the smaller companies, and they can't really afford a long lead time after they secure a lease.
Yes.
Okay, well, the reason I bring that up is because of some of the issues involving the Bureau of Land Management, federal lands, and big companies being able to buy the leases and basically hold the leases to impact the market. And I wanted to know if that was the case, but if you're doing the leases, you're utilizing the resources for the benefit of the tribe.
We do a lot of hard work to make business attractive on the reservation, and it's a team effort of good quality staff that make that happen.
How does this impact tribal employment?
Tribal employment, we push real hard for tribal employment. We have our growth fund employs quite a few tribal members. We'd like to see that increase, and through our education program, we stress the fact that if we can get some engineers or geologists through our education program, they'd have a job waiting for them when they.
What's your unemployment rate?
Unemployment on the reservation, I don't have those numbers, but I can definitely provide that to you.
I would appreciate if you'd provide that to the committee.
Okay.
I had something else I wanted to address in the context of utilizing these revenues. For years, the United States had a ban on exporting crude oil. We have now lifted that ban. I think, what was that, Mr. Chairman? That was in December of 2015.
Right.
Have you seen any uptick, increase in interest in those resources?
Most of what we've been paying attention on since 2015 has been the focus of, the falling oil prices. So I don't know if that had any effect in that or how that all played in a part, but I mean, just the fall in the oil prices.
How has the regulatory regime, the new regulations that have been handed down, impacted the opportunities for companies to come in and secure a lease and actually start production?
I think that the regulations that come through the BLM and onto the reservation, one of the toughest parts was BLM trying to place us under the title of public lands. And that really concerned us towards the choice of, or not towards the choice, but the discussion of sovereignty. And we took charge in that to try to head that off.
Mr. Chairman, I think there's something we need to explore a little bit further about how the Bureau of Land Management is impacting the ability of the Ute tribe and others.
This is our introductory hearing, and we're going to figure out where we're going to go from here, so absolutely.
Well, thank you,
I think
Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
appropriate. And the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, we're going to go back over to the Democrat side and let her ask some questions, and then we'll be back to Mr. Comer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be Mr. Raskin if you need me to be for this portion, but
I think you're fine being who you are.
thank you. Thank you all so much again for this. And I wanted to ask some questions to you, Mr. Rusko. In the high-risk report, there are some issues related to education of the tribal youth. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. It appears that not only are the children not being properly educated, but they're being placed in harm's way with outdated and deteriorating equipment and infrastructure. We saw pictures of this earlier. Would you say that that's a correct assessment?
That is correct. Actually, we found instances where boilers had failed inspection because of carbon monoxide leaks, natural gas leaks, and those leaks persisted in some cases for as much as 8 months in student dorms with staff and students still there.
And that's very disturbing. And wanted to know, has any of that resulted in injuries to the children or staff at this point?
We know that they did fix it. We don't have any information regarding the medical situation for those individuals, but it's certainly not a condition that we want our schools to be in, and it is not acceptable for students and staff to be in those environments.
Thank you. And this is an ongoing problem that I know the GAO has identified. From previous reports, have you seen any improvements in this? Have there been changes that are done since the reports that were done previously?
There have been some improvements, I think, because of our work and because of the work of this Congress in terms of shining a light on issues. We did find, for example, last year that about 1/3 of schools had not been inspected for many years for health and safety issues. And in response to our work, the department made sure that every school was inspected for the first time this past fiscal year. However, we're not sure that those inspections were complete or accurate. And the reason I say that is that because in the past, there were situations where, for example, someone did a drive-by where they never left their car. They did the inspection from their car, never went into a single building, and in one case, there was a school with 34 buildings. Inspector never went inside and produced an inspection. Not surprisingly, there were no deficiencies noted for inside the buildings.
So with seeing that what would be the thing that would allow for these, not just the inspections to be done and not just us shining a light on them, but actual movement in terms of improvement for children and the environment in which they're expected to go to school?
The bottom line is you need to be able to identify these safety hazards and then fix them. The schools need to get help in remedying these issues, and we made a recommendation that the department assist schools in doing this, and that has yet to be implemented.
And when you say the department, which department do you mean?
Department of Interior, Indian Affairs.
Okay. And so then, Ms. Kendall, what have been the measures that your department or DOI has implemented or have you seen done to address these issues? And for those issues that have not been addressed, what would be the impetus or the assistance to help you get that done? Because I can't believe that the Department of Interior wants children to be in these positions, going to school in environments like this. So what is the help that you need to make sure that that's done? What are the things that are keeping you from getting that done?
Well, we've identified issues with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Bureau of Indian Education's resource levels, but I think much of it is more a distribution and using those resources effectively. The Office of Inspector General, of course, has no programmatic authority to make any of these things happen, but I think that greater oversight over BIA and BIE by this body and other congressional oversight, in addition to the oversight that my office and GAO conducts, would go a long way in, as well as some really serious leadership action by probably new leadership in the Office of Indian Affairs, BIA and BIE.
Because this is the second time that you've mentioned a change in leadership or the problems coming from leadership, coming from the top down. Why have you said that?
Well, It hasn't gotten significantly better. I've been with the Office of Inspector General for 17 years, and frankly, I think we could probably reissue many of the reports that we issued 10, 12 years ago and find much the same kind of conditions that we find today. Perhaps here and there, things have gotten better, based usually on recommendations by GAO or the OIG. But as a whole, the system is very, very problematic.
Thank you. And so, Mr. Chairman, I think that sounds like a witness list for us for potentially another hearing.
We'll work on it. We've got a very busy schedule for this committee, as you know.
Well, let's get to work, no problem.
All right, so now we're going to finish out let everybody get their first round in here. So we'll move on to Mr. Comer from Kentucky.
Well, thank you. I wanted to focus on developing and drilling there. Obviously, there's a window of opportunity in Washington to try to open back up and redefine our energy policy, and certainly your economy, this would be a huge boost to it. I have a question, Mr. Thompson. Where does the money go that BLM charges for the drilling permit fee?
We don't get a report on that.
I understand, you don't get any of that?
It's
Do you know the amount?
9,500 is a permit fee, but where
Okay.
that goes, I couldn't tell you.
Does anyone know where that money goes?
It goes into the general fund.
The general fund? Okay. What prevents BLM from approving the drilling permits for tribal land sooner?
That's a question of concern. We don't know exactly why, but there are a number of things we've pointed out. So the first thing is they don't track the times, so for permits very well. So we've been down this path. We have oil and gas development on federal lands in general on the high-risk list. We've found that there's problems of having people in the right places at the right times. They often don't have the staff they need to do all the jobs that they have to do, and they haven't been very creative in getting them there. There have been a couple of good pilots to pull people from some places to busier, less busy places to busier places, and those have worked. They need to be better at that. They need to be more nimble and more creative.
Okay. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We will now recognize the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Chaffetz.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple things I want to talk about. Do you know, any of you know what the percentage of students who are considered to have grade level math skills is? Because my statistics that are right here before me say that only 5% of students are reaching grade level math skills. Does that sound right? Crickets? Nobody? Could you please look at that? I'm reading another stat that says, does anybody know what the national dropout rate is of the students, Native American students, their high schools, grade schools? No? It's something I guess I would plead with both the GAO and the Office Inspector of General to have at the top of their minds as they look at this. My understanding is that is 47%. 47%. Pretty high. Part of the issue that we have in Utah, right across, Mr. Thompson, across the border there in the Four Corners area, I happen to represent Utah's 3rd Congressional District. We have a lot of the Navajo Nation. 3% of the Navajo Nation, the greater Navajo Nation, is in Utah. We have 7 chapters in my congressional district. We have a heavy problem, or a big problem with roads and the ability to get to school and back. Mr. Thompson, I don't know what it's like on the Colorado side of the line, but do you have these types of problems? School buses, kids, their ability to get to school? How far do they travel to get to school? What's your personal experience on this issue?
Again, because of the checkerboard nature of the reservation, we also have a municipal city close by to the tribal headquarters. So the tribal community surrounds this municipality, and it's it's pretty close. So, I mean, the access isn't difficult, and it's an improving school system, happy to say. So,
Good.
We work pretty close through our education department and the school to make sure people are where they need to be.
I think if you would look, though, and this is my plea also to GAO and the Inspector General's office, as you go out and visit this part of the world, what people don't realize is how expansive it is. My county, San Juan County, is bigger than New Jersey. We have one stoplight. And if you look probably into Mr. Gosar's district, look into, in that Four Corners area, one of the big problems that we have is the ability of our students to get to school, because when it rains or there's snow, there is a big problem with, and we've got lots of pictures. The school funding levels have not changed or to deal with the road maintenance. San Juan County is doing everything it can, but you have students that on average, in many places, miss more than a day of school per month just because they can't get to school. And I think she would like to say something. Have you been sworn in, I hope?
I have.
Okay, good.
She has.
My name is Melissa Emery-Aris. I'm with the GAO, and I think this is very much on point, and I want to let you know that GAO is currently investigating this issue of tribal roads and school attendance, and we have a forthcoming report on this topic.
Oh, very good. What, do you have a sense of the timing of this?
I believe it's late spring.
Very good. That is greatly appreciated. We did offer an amendment on an appropriations bill, and we're able to get that through, but because of the CR, I don't know that it actually made it all the way to the finish line, but to the levels that we'd like to see in the future. But it is a big problem, and your report would be much, much appreciated. The per pupil spending is much higher than it is actually in other parts of the country. Your ability to help us understand why the dropout rate is so high, reading and writing and certainly the math level is so low, we would very, very much appreciate.
I could speak to some of that if that would be
Sure.
helpful at this moment. We have done a look at school spending, and you're completely right. It's much higher on a per-pupil basis for the BIE schools. We found that it was 56% higher than comparable public schools. A lot of that has to do, as you point out, with the remote locations of the schools. Also, the schools tend to have lower enrollments than public schools, and in addition, quite a few of the students tend to be low income and in need of special education services, which are more costly. So those are some of the driving factors for the difference in costs. And in terms of the academics, as you point out, students in the BIU school system do perform worse than students elsewhere. We found, for example, that students attending BIE schools scored 22 points lower for reading tests and 14 points lower for math tests in the fourth grade than other Indian students attending public schools. So this is,
Right.
very comparable in that way. And as you all know, the graduation rates are also much lower for Indian students attending BIE schools than Indian students nationwide.
And so my plea, I guess, for the panel and everybody is we can keep doing what we're doing and we'll probably get the same results. But if you want a different result, we're probably going to have to do something different. So suggestions, ideas on what to do different rather than just spend more money, because we're already spending more money, we've got to be able to figure out how to get a different result, and we're open to the ideas and possibilities. I've gone over my time. Thank you, Chairman. Yield back.
Thank you very much. We'll now recognize the Vice Chairman of the Subcommittee, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Gosar.
Thank the chairman. Mr. Thompson, my family's from Durango and Bayfield, so thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you.
I want to highlight your tribe because you've taken advantage of your resources and development, right?
Yes,
That's why you're in the position you are today, right?
part of the reason, sure.
Pretty aggressive, right?
Oh, yeah, pretty aggressive.
So I want to go back to these terras, okay? Because they're of high conflict, in your opinion, right?
Yes,
Okay. So part of the problem is that the Interior has, or BIA has been very poor on their promises, right? In keeping their promises?
historically, yes.
So if you were to write, looking at these terraces, have you had any direct review of these terraces personally yourself?
Personally, we've gone through a few since my time, and it's been a discussion for quite a bit of time, actually, within our legal team and other council members of the past.
Have you made proposals to BIA and BLM in regards to how those terras could be better defined or how their interpretations are?
Yes, we've made suggested changes, requested information, especially on the inherent federal functions. We've also asked about how they would measure tribal capacity, how they will define the inclusion of public in the discussion process, and also what is the assumed federal functions the tribe will take on. That's been some unclear answers since the beginning of questioning.
Did you get any answers?
Not to this day.
Would it be possible to get those letters of inquiry to the committee?
I'm sure we could provide you with a lot of documentation to that effect.
So, in getting back to these terras and giving up to, because I thought I heard some of the aspects of impugned sovereignty, non-sovereignty, right?
Okay.
Is that what I heard?
Within
Within these terras?
I think it's close to how terras will affect our sovereignty, and we want to always empower tribes, our tribe, other tribes, to have more responsibility over what governs themselves and how we govern ourselves, and so we try to get to that.
So I like where you're going. So I'm going to go back to these permitting processes because of the inherent bias within, I think, is going on within the agency. Do you have the same kind of problems for alternative energy?
No, we actually received a pretty good grant to get a solar project started on our reservation.
Are they fast-tracked?
It should come up on online this spring.
Wow. What kind of permitting time was that?
It was started right before I came in. Do we know how long that was? It was a few years of permitting process, though.
So it went through a full, long line of permitting, so something still similar to that application.
Yes.
Was there a change in aptitude in regards to looking at alternative energy versus oil and gas?
I'm not sure there was a change in attitude on that.
So was it easier to find people to come out to review it? I'd be really intrigued by that because I'm a believer in all the above energy policy. And so, I think that we've got to feign away the biases. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think this would be a great opportunity to invite you to our reservation to see what we do and maybe.
I go through there all the time.
Well, I mean, just meet with our staff and really talk about these things and get these answers firsthand. It'd be a great opportunity.
Well, and it drives me to my point about sovereignty, is that if you're truly sovereign, really, why is it that the BIA or the BLM is truly involved?
I think it comes down again to what they define as tribal trust responsibility.
No, but I think they're two different things.
There is.
Because in sovereignty, I mean, there shouldn't be an inherited trust obligation because you're taking that.
Yes.
So I think that conversation should be a very innate one. But I'd really like to explore more about the terras and in regards to you, because you have been a very successful tribe. And I think a lot more tribes need to understand how you leverage that, because it's very similar to what Western states were promised in regards to royalties and shared royalties for the betterment of education and government, rural governments and stuff like that, and infrastructure projects. So we'll keep this up. I've run out of time. I appreciate it, Mr. Thompson.
Gentleman yields back. I'll now recognize myself for a round of questioning. This morning at the full committee in the same room, we had Gene Dodaro, and I asked him basically 3 questions related to this afternoon's hearing, and it went like this. Isn't it true that the federal government has failed our tribes when it comes to their education? Isn't it true that we have been less than responsive at helping them build their energy requirements? I didn't name oil versus anything else. I just said energy, and he said yes. And as I went through that process, what I've discovered was we, the federal government, have failed. And when I asked the general what we should do about it, he said, well, I will be meeting with HHS when it comes to the healthcare part, which was the third failure. I'll be meeting with the new secretary, and when confirmed, the new Secretary of Interior. He's got a big job, and he's going to have to make fundamental changes. Now, I say this just to make sure that you knew what your boss had said. Do you see any difference in the fact that our federal government in the past several years has failed in these three areas sufficiently that for the first time that I've been looking at it, these are on the high risk?
No, I was at this morning's hearing, and I'd never disagree with the Comptroller General. But
well, this is one place you're welcome to shed some light. We'll give you congressional immunity, of course.
Thank you. But no, I agree 100%. This is a case where in all three areas, we all agreed that the body of work that had been done in there showed a persistent failure to efficiently and appropriately manage federal programs designed to serve tribes and their members.
And I'm particularly concerned about health care. It would seem that at a time when we put just in Obamacare subsidies, $51 billion into subsidies for less well-off people, it sounds like Indian Health didn't get their share of that.
Kathy King is here from our healthcare group to.
Kathy, good to have an expert.
Thank you. A few years ago, we did some projections about the number of Indians that would be eligible for, or potentially eligible for care under the ACA, both under Medicaid and under the exchanges. And we found that there were hundreds of thousands that could be potentially eligible, depending upon whether you live in a state where Medicaid has expanded.
But in most cases, if you live on tribal land, such as the Navajo and others, you're very likely to be below that 135% of the poverty.
Yes. We have not gone back and looked to see how many of them have actually enrolled in those programs. But the enrollment in those programs can be potentially helpful in two ways. One, if people enroll in Medicaid or the exchanges and they seek care at an IHS facility, then IHS can bill for those services and they can augment their revenues and serve more people. Or if they go elsewhere, that frees up more money for people at IHS.
Well, and that begs the question of, if somebody comes in to a Native facility, are they asking, are you on it, and then assisting them in getting on it, which ultimately is a self-funding method? Did you find that in your overview?
We did our work before the ACA actually took effect, but one of the things that we were concerned
But Medicaid was still a question back then.
Yeah, Medicaid was still a concern, but it were the expansions. They do have patient care representatives, but one of the things that we would have liked them to do is to expand their use of patient care representatives to help with what we thought would be an onslaught of enrollment. And they said that they were not able to do that.
And as a result, what could have improved life for Native Americans didn't happen, and that's why they're on the endangered or the high-risk list.
Some of our work predated that. So we don't know for sure, but there are two ways that people get care through the IHS. You can get care at an IHS facility, or if the services are not available there, which they frequently aren't, then they buy services on the open market. And when they do that, there is a priority listing that varies from area to area. So in some areas, the only people who get care are people who are in danger of life or limb.
In other words, we're giving less than the care that they were promised because we either they can't come to a clinic that has the facility, or we're crying poor and rationing care.
There is a trust responsibility.
Okay, I'll close quickly because the energy issue Mr. Gosar touched on. I want to just run one question, and I'm not a lawyer, so that means that I may ask a question I don't know the answer to. But in a nutshell, the last 8 years, in my estimation, there's been a war on carbon, on coal, on oil, on natural gas. When you look at the difficulty that tribes have getting through a bureaucracy, even though they pay for something that is their asset on their sovereign land, is there any possibility that, not that they were signaled out, but they were caught up in a war on carbon that occurred that caused them to be simply not able to exercise their rights. And I ask that because clearly federal land usage for natural gas, oil, and coal dropped over the last 8 years while it rose on non-federal land.
There's a lot there. We did find that these delays and problems with permitting and development occurred across the board for energy on tribal lands. So there are wind projects that had been languishing for years. And meanwhile, state or utility agreements to purchase the power expired, and they had to renegotiate these things. We found that kind of across the board.
So if I can summarize what you said, you're saying the last several years they've been inept at allowing Native Americans to utilize the resources, and as a result, it has hurt their ability to help themselves.
Certainly, when you miss an opportunity and you know, for example, for oil and gas, development is all about the price of the resource and the location of the resource. When prices are high, companies are like all over the place. And if you can't get a permit through in time and the price falls, they're less interested. So there's an inherent disadvantage if you know you're going to go into a long permitting process.
Well, since the gentleman from Texas comes from a place where they do permits on a state basis and they do them quickly, I will let him reassume the chair, and I thank all of you and yield back.
Ms. Plaskett, do you have some more questions?
I do have a couple more questions.
All right,
Thank
then
you for
we'll-
your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. Touching on the question that was just raised by my colleague, Mr. Issa, about the Affordable Care Act, Mr. Rusko, do you know, is it possible for GAO to make a determination on how many American Indians are currently using? I know that that was not part of your last report, but do you or Ms. Kendall, have you looked at ways of determining who is taking advantage of that?
We could examine eligibility rolls.
And
Determine
would that also tell you, the other question they asked, was IHS informing tribal members that the Affordable Care Act was available for them?
They did do, in response to our recommendations, they did begin doing some outreach. There was a delay because there was some uncertainty about whether the Affordable Care Act would go into effect or not, but they did do some outreach. But we could now go back and look at eligibility rolls and determine how many people enrolled.
I mean, I just find this, you know, heartbreaking because this really correlates to so much of what's happening in my own community and in most communities, minority communities, underserved communities, where people are dying of preventable diseases. And a lot of it is treatable health conditions related to diabetes and hypertension and some of these other areas that we should be taking up the slack in.
Yes, and we do know that Native Americans have a shorter life expectancy and greater comorbidities.
Okay, thank you very much. And the other questions that I have are related to Ms. Kendall. When there was the creation of the Inspector General, which you say you've been there now for 17 years to detect waste, fraud, and abuse, you do that by hiring auditors and investigators, correct?
That's correct.
How many do you have on staff now?
We have roughly 100 auditors and about 95 investigators
And that's for the Department of Interior.
for the entire department.
And what are they reviewing? What's the scope of their review?
Well, we have 9 bureaus and offices that comprise the Department of the Interior, so our oversight responsibility is vast.
Okay, and vast meaning how many thousands of?
70,000 employees, about that again of grantees and contractors.
So that's a good point. So you're not only reviewing yourself, but you have contractors and vendors and others that you do review for.
That's correct.
So the announcement of a hiring freeze in the recent administration, what has happened in the past when you've had hiring freezes in terms of the agency and the Inspector General being able to complete their operations?
Well, essentially, like all the OIGs, we are very personnel-driven, and close to 80% of our budget goes to salaries. We have no programmatic functions or funding, and so a hiring freeze, much like budget reductions, hit us in a fundamental ability to do our job.
You know, and that's important under this committee because we rely on you all so much for the reports and the timely reports that you give us so that we can identify these areas that are of concern, so we can address the Bureau of Indian Affairs and their discrepancies, deal with the school issues that we have. Can you describe for us some of the challenges that your office will face now if there's a hiring freeze in the Office of Inspector General?
Well, certainly, we do not have a great deal of vacancies right now, but if we were to continue to lose people to retirement or to other agencies or to the private sector, we would be limited considerably in being able to fill those positions. As I heard Mr. Dodaro this morning talk about hiring freezes, I believe he said that historically they have not been particularly effective in terms of saving funds, but certainly agencies like ours who are really personnel-driven, we are affected fairly significantly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I just want to follow up on one thing. My inner tech geek is going to come out, so I wanted to talk to Mr. Thompson about your scanning project. I also serve on the technology subcommittee of this committee, and one of the things that I've noticed is our federal government couldn't compute its way out of a paper bag sometimes. Could you outline the scanning program and the GIS program and how y'all took that over and how that is helping the federal government? And do you think there's some ways that, based on what you have done, the federal agencies or other tribes could improve the service within the federal government by things that you do yourselves?
Awesome. I guess there was a few years ago, there was a deadline set on realty records and BIA records all being consolidated to a place in Oklahoma. It was concerning to us. We needed those documents to do our business on a day-to-day. So that's when there was a rush to try to do something to start scanning these records in. At the same time, we needed a better system than TAMS could ever provide, and we needed something more efficient to help us be better stewards of our land and our opportunities. So we developed the land information management system as a way of making it easier to track all realty functions that take place on the reservation, all rights of ways, anything related to energy, going into the system to give us a point-and-click kind of situation that we can get to the documents we need to do what we need to do.
And you were able to find a software solution, hardware solution, to do that relatively easily and inexpensively?
No, we created the system ourselves
Okay.
internally. It wasn't something that anybody else had to offer that would work for us, so it's something that we developed on our own with good people and time.
Okay. And given in hindsight, would you do it again?
I think if we had to go through this entire process of having to do it, I wish that could have been different, but I mean, it did produce an opportunity for us to create something that works.
And is that something you're open to sharing with potentially other tribes, or you sharing your experience in there, working together to make things better for everybody?
I think Southern Utes always willing to help other tribes as much as they can, showing them what we have done as a success story in Indian country and energy development. And again, we throwing out the offer of the invitation to see the demonstration.
Great. Ms. Plaskett, did you have anything else? All right. I'd like to thank our witnesses for taking time to appear before us today. I'd also like to ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit questions for the record. Without objection, that's so ordered. If there's no additional business, without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.
Awesome.